Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday Tea with Elsa. We are inside today because it's snowing again here in Friday Harbor. And as much as I like the snow, the camera equipment, the phones, they don't like being out in the snow so much, particularly when it's wet like it is today. So I'm inside and I thought I would share with you my little recording studio. So all of my windows are covered with velvet curtains so that the sound is good in here. And I have my little recording studio here. Now, I won't be able to actually start recording work until my fire dies down, but you know, it's snowing outside, so I thought a little bit of a fire to take the chill off the house would be nice first. So yeah, it's snowing outside, and today is a day when I get to stay inside and do theory work and do the mental aspects of horse training, which is also important. Now, I was asked a question last week to talk a little bit about the differences between wild horses and domestic horses, and horses who choose the way they live versus horses that have life chosen for them by humans. Now, in the wild, a horse will choose a herd, and they don't ever leave their herd. A horse in the wild will stay with their herd 24/7, all day long, every day, 7 days a week, 360 days a year, until they are forcefully separated from their herd. And then we bring them into the domestic world, and we expect them to adapt and accommodate when we want to take them away from their friends for a ride. And it's an interesting thing because people start questioning, is this a valid thing to do? Is it okay to ask my horses to leave their friends and go for a ride when it's not the way it would work in the natural horse world? And the thing that I keep coming back to is that the choices that we make for ourselves, while they are natural, are not always the most healthy choices. As living beings, we choose what is normal, what is familiar, what is easy. And when horses in the wild are living together, they do so because there are predators and they're safer when they're in a tight-knit group. Now, where we have them in the domestic world and there isn't that threat of the young horses being picked off by wild predators, this is something that they can adjust to, that it is not so important that they stay in that tight bonded herd when there's not so much danger around. But it's something that they have to adapt to. And this is something I think is really important, is helping them adapt to the life they are currently living. If we took a domestic horse and we turned it out in the wild with the wild horses, they would need to adapt to that situation, which means it's not safe to go off by yourself when there's wolves and mountain lions and predators. You have to stay with the herd. That's what's safe in that environment. In the domestic environment, it's quite safe to go off with your human friend and just the two of you leave the herd. You can adapt to that being normal in that situation. And I think that horses are incredibly adaptable. And just the way we would hope a domestic horse that got turned out in the wild would adapt to what it needed to do in the wild, there's absolutely no reason why it can't work the other way around also. A wild horse coming in the domestic world learns that life is different here. It's not so dangerous. You don't need to stay so close to your herd in order to survive. And I think this is really important that we think about stress is a normal part of life. Things that are hard or difficult or new or interesting, these things make life better, as long as they're not too overwhelming. I don't think that any horse would say having mountain lions around that might eat the foals is better, but it's interesting, and it becomes the motivator for them having a very close-knit, bonded, tight herd that doesn't separate. Stressors are motivations for learning. And hopefully in the domestic world, we've found some stressors for horses that are a little bit more gentle than mountain lions threatening to eat them. And so if we take this idea that stress is a normal part of life, there's always going to be things that are outside the comfort zone. And then figuring out that puzzle. How do you solve that puzzle of, this is the stressful thing, how do I work with it? How do I adapt with it? In the dangerous wild world where horses are free and they live out in the woods and the high plains and there really are predators, it's really important that they adapt to that by bonding very close together. When they come into the domestic world and they live with people, they get to adapt to the fact that pair bonding becomes very important. You bond two together, ideally the horse and the rider, and then you can go out and explore the world together in a pair. You don't need the entire herd. And this adaptability to the stress of your unique life situation is really one of the awesome things about horses, is they adapt. They adapt incredibly well. So we don't have predators when we bring them into the domestic world, at least most of us don't. We don't have a lack of water. Horses don't have to go for days before they find a source of water. We don't have a lack of food in the winter when everything freezes. We keep throwing them hay. There are all sorts of things that we make better when we bring a horse in from the wild. I'm not saying everything's better, but in terms of many simple things like food and water and vet care, horses in the wild don't live to be very old, because they have the kind of stressors that mean their lives are shorter and more intense. When we bring a horse into the domestic world, we take away some of the intensity, but we give them an ease of life that makes life much more long. You know, they can live for a lot longer and enjoy it. So we take these ideas that stressors are different in different situations, and given the stressors that you have, you adapt around them. So in the domestic world, most horses live with people that want to ride them, and they adapt around that. Is it moral for us to ask a horse to carry us, wait on their back? I don't really know the answer to that question. I do know some horses enjoy it and some horses don't. Is it moral? I don't know. It's no greater a stress in my mind than going out without food, or, you know, having a hurt tooth and not having anybody to help you with it. There's a lot of stressors that happen in the wild that horses just have to navigate. And in the domestic world, it's a different set of stressors. And I don't think it's any better or any worse. It's just different. George says, I always pair up a new incoming Mustang with a veteran Mustang that fits the new Mustang's needs. Pairs are wonderful. Yeah, that's a great idea, George. When we get these new Mustangs in from the wild, it's really wonderful to pair them up with a horse that not only knows where they came from, but they know what the new set of stressors are in the domestic environment. They are adaptable. Horses are so adaptable to their situation. Now, if we want to be really good stewards, what we do is we break down each new stressor into small enough bite-sized pieces that it's not overwhelming. We try and set up the learning environment so that the horses are able to understand and wrap their brain around what it means to be in a domestic environment. Now, I know a lot of people who have horses that were never wild, that have always been domestic horses, but still don't know how to deal with the domestic life stressors without getting overwhelmed. And if we can break those stressors down into small enough pieces, let the horses think about them, look at them, smell them, hear them, taste them, digest what the stressor is and how to navigate it. What do they need to do to feel safe in this situation? That is our job as being the best steward possible. Now, for some of us, riding is going to be part of that. For some of us, riding is not going to be part of it. For some of us, trailering horses from one place to another is part of that. For other people, they don't think that's something a horse should need to do. There's so many pros and cons to every situation that the best thing I think we can do is help our horses be adaptable. If you can be adaptable, then no matter what happens, you're less likely to become overwhelmed. And overwhelmed is when you see fight or flight come up. We want our horses thinking and engaging in the world and saying, okay, this is what my life is. How do I deal with it? How do I manage it? How do I work around it? Christian says, stressors after changing stable are sometimes also flooding for a horse. Yeah. Because you see, in the wild, a horse wouldn't change families like that. Not very often. And if they did, it would be a big stressor. So going from, one place to another, moving from one barn to another barn with different horses and different environment and different things, it can be really overwhelming. So the best thing we can do is break it down into small pieces. Can you try this new thing for a little while and then retreat and think about something that's easy for you? And then advance and think about something that's hard for you. And then retreat and think about something that's easy for you. And go back and forth and back and forth. It's the same thing if we are working with horses in a domestic world or if we're working with horses out in the wild. Well, obviously they're working with each other in the wild. It wouldn't be us as humans, but whether they're having a relationship with other horses in the wild or they're having a relationship with humans in the domestic world, it's all about being able to change focus back and forth between the thing that's hard and the thing that's easy. And so, is it unacceptable to ask horses to leave their friends to go for a ride? I don't think it's any more unacceptable than any other stressor that might happen. Can we break it into small enough pieces that the horse can tolerate the change? That's the question. Christian says, lately I said someone is like Columbus discovered America when horses get outside from a stable. So when horses get outside from a stable and they're used to being in a stable, and when they get outside, it is like developing a whole new world. Some of them are really excited to explore the new world. Some of them are afraid to explore the new world. And that just depends on how overwhelmed they are. If we can break it into small enough pieces so they get interested, engaged, curious, thinking, then the stressors are good. If we do too much too soon, the stressors are overwhelming and you get a lot of fight or flight. So, yeah, George, exactly. Some barns are a lot more stressful than others. But you'll also find some horses are a lot more adaptable than others. So you can take a very adaptable horse into a stressful barn, and instead of thinking of it as stressful, they think of it as interesting. They go, oh, that noise is fascinating. Oh, why is that horse calling or whinnying? Or, everything becomes a curiosity factor and something to look at and understand and figure out. If we break learning down into small enough pieces, you develop a horse that can handle new things. So yeah, exactly. Breaking it down into small enough pieces is what it's all about. Now, if you have a herd out in the wild and they have predators around, okay, obviously there's nothing you can break down into small pieces. But what happens in a herd that has predators, wolves or mountain lions, is they switch focus back and forth a lot between the sounds and the smells around them and each other in the herd. Okay, that's how they break it down. They go, I am scared of what is out there, but my friends are right here, and that makes me feel better. But I'm scared of the thing that's out there, but my friends are right here. And those focus changes back and forth is how they break that down so they can manage living in a very dangerous situation. So yeah, exactly, Christian, those focus changes looks for the stressors. The stressors are the things that force us to learn. And learning is really good as long as it's not overwhelming. And when you see a horse that's really good at this, it's fun to watch them. They say, this thing that I'm looking at is new, but I can change my focus and look at something that's familiar and comfortable for a moment to calm myself, to feel okay. And then I can look out again at the thing that's new. What am I learning about? Sandra says, I changed my winter jacket today and my Mustang didn't want to approach me. It took quite a bit for her to acknowledge. I can't read your entire comment, Sandra, because I only get a clip of them when I'm doing Facebook Live, but that's an environmental stressor, okay? And so sometimes people say, well, is it fair for us to stress our horses this way in the domestic world, whether it's asking them to leave the herd or asking them to adapt to my winter jacket? You know, in a horse herd, they don't change jackets. They have pretty much the same coat all the time. And all I can say is I think that if you break it down into small enough pieces, it's interesting and fun and diverse and a beautiful experience. If it's too much too soon, then it's overwhelming, and our job is to figure out how to break it down or how to teach the horse to change focus so they can break it down for themselves. And that's what freedom-based training is all about, is the feel and the timing. How do we break things down so that the feel and the timing is such that horses are not overwhelmed and they want to learn. They want to be part of this. They want to adapt to the stressors that their particular life has. I'm really glad that my domestic horses don't have to go for days without water. I'm really glad that I can throw them hay even when it's snowing. I like that those are stressors they don't have. And I totally understand I'm going to put other stressors in their life that will make their life interesting in other ways. They're not going to have to travel 20 miles to find food or water. But they are going to maybe need to take me for a ride and talk to my neighbors and meet their dogs. You know, that's a different kind of stressor. So, Christian said I gave my horse a blanket and he was suddenly new to his herd. So yeah, that's one of those things. Horses get new coats when they're in the domestic world. And that becomes a new kind of stressor that is a stimulus for learning. If it's not too overwhelming, learning's a good thing. So those are my thoughts for today. It is neither bad nor good to take your horse away from the herd when it's not something they would normally do in the wild. It's just a new and different thing that they would have to adapt to. And, you know, if you worry about it, just think about all the things that they don't have to adapt to because they live with you and they get fed and they get water and they don't have to work so hard for the basic necessities of life. So in the domestic world, we just take away one stressor and add a different stressor. And horses are adaptable. They're really adaptable. So here's to feel and timing and breaking things down and teaching horses how to break things down for themselves. And thank you guys for spending tea time with me. And I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I'll be back next Tuesday. If you have anything in particular you would like me to speak on, make sure and leave it in the comments. I'm always happy to take on a new subject for the week. And George, yes, if we're seen as part of the herd, it's easier on everyone. Absolutely. All right, have a wonderful day, everyone.